Thank you, Mr Speaker. I rise this afternoon to speak to this matter of public importance on health. There is no greater conversation that I'm hearing from people in our community at the moment around the priorities of this government, and this government putting the priorities of, for instance, the development of a football stadium over the focus on supporting our health services, supporting people that have been on waiting lists for housing, supporting people that do an incredible job in our education system. There is no doubt right now that this matter of public importance around health and the priorities in our community is the number one conversation that's going on for Tasmanians right now. I made a commitment to the people in my community in coming to Hobart this week that I would deliver on their behalf a message to this government to ensure that by the time Parliament was over this week, there was no doubt in the minds of this government that Tasmanians do not want this government to prioritise a stadium over health in Tasmania. They do not want this government to prioritise a stadium over housing in Tasmania, and they do not want this government to prioritise a stadium over supporting education in this community. There is no doubt right now that this government is so out of touch, it has its priorities wrong, and it doesn't seem to be able to figure out a way to come back to the focus and align themselves with the needs and the concerns and the priorities of Tasmanians. I said to the people of Tasmania that are on the waiting lists, whether they're waiting for specialists or they're waiting for elective surgery, I said to the people in our community that are experiencing distress when they're waiting for ambulance or being ramped at our hospitals, for people that are not able to be entered into the hospital system because of bed block, that I would deliver a message to this government to say that you have got your priorities wrong, and Tasmanians do not want a stadium over support of our health, support of housing, support of education, or support of our public sector workers that right now are having to take action to be heard, to have their conditions and their pay relative to the amount of effort and support and care they're giving and understanding that Tasmanians need. Now, in order to do that, I just want to put on the record, because this is a matter of public importance, and I want to put on the record some public commentary around the government and their inability to understand the priorities of Tasmanians right now. So there can be no question that the government have heard these messages. Just this morning in the Mercury, Michael wrote, I read that the Tasmanian government is going to spend $375 million as part payment on a football stadium when Tasmania is accepted into the AFL. I also read that the same government has offered a pay rise of 2.75% to public sector workers over 4 years. What a joke. The public sector workers deserve more than this and must feel that this government is, and I probably can't say this in Parliament, but people can read the Mercury for the comment. When taken to hospital with chest pains by the ambulance, who do a great job, you have the consolation of knowing that at the very least Tasmanians will have a stadium. Closer to the Premier's hometown on the northwest coast, another Michael, not only asking the Premier but also Minister Jentzsch. Can Minister Jentzsch please explain how all Tasmanians will benefit from building a new stadium and having an AFL team? I may be a bit slow, but I'm not stupid. As a pensioner living on the northwest coast, will my cost of living go down? Will my power bill go down? Will my fuel bill go down? Will my weekly grocery bill go down? Will there be more doctors for me to choose from? And then just as recently as this morning, having indicated to the community that this would be a matter of public importance for the Parliament to consider today, that we would be calling on the government to correct their priorities and stand back from a stadium and actually focus on what Tasmanians want, there were responses made in my social media feed from locals, and I'm going to read some of those out so there's no question about the priority of Tasmanians. Tell the government and the AFL to live in tents or cars for 2 months with little money to live on, not knowing if they will have a hot meal or when they can have a shower or when they'll be warm enough at night. It's a windy and rainy day coming. Is the tent going to stay up or will it be blown away? Maybe it could be their parents or children living like this. Would they be talking about building another stadium then? And again, language not repeatable in the Parliament, but you get the point. The people don't need it. Tell them to look around and see what's happening. So many people are out on the streets and hungry. They can't afford to buy things for their children to eat. I'm trying to help people, but finding it hard with no funding. The priorities are education, housing, health. People need help. from another member. It's also an issue for me that these big infrastructure projects seem to take forever to pay off. Instead of paying them off, they're constantly diverting the money to pay for something else that's been promised. I totally agree. It's not the stadium, it's the ongoing costs that Tasmanian people will have to cover. And we've heard this morning that when the government have their priorities wrong, they also haven't done the work to really understand the commitment they're making to Tasmanians. They are putting this responsibility onto Tasmanians, the Tasmanian taxpayers, without having done the work to understand the true costs of this stadium, whether it be the capital costs or the operational costs, the true cost of maintenance, the true cost of depreciation, the true interest costs on the borrowings to actually deliver this big project. It is not the right time for this government to have their priorities so out of whack that they do not understand the priorities of Tasmanians. It is not the right time to be building another stadium in Hobart when we have extended waiting lists, when we have people, and we know that oral health is an indicator of all sorts of other future health issues, when we have so many people waiting on the oral health list, when we have blood block, when we have ambulance ramping. This is not the right time. The government have their priorities wrong. Tasmanian Labor have a priority of Tasmanian people. Tasmanian Labor are focused on supporting Tasmanians. Tasmanian Labor have been calling that Tasmanians pay a Tasmanian price for Tasmanian power. Tasmanians are calling on this government to stop the stupidity, walk away from their commitment to the stadium now. This is not the right time. The right time now is for you to be focused on the things that Tasmanians need. They need support with health, with housing, with education. Our public sector workers need support with their wages and their conditions. This government has their priorities wrong. It is not the right time to be building a stadium in Hobart. Tasmanian Labor stand with the people of Tasmania, and so we'll support them to make sure that this project does not go ahead.